Hi, I'm Gary Meier, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug, and I've got the credentials to prove it.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other that we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show the father who knows nothing, radio guru, Rick Kaempfer. Rick, welcome to the show. So glad to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
It is a pleasure to have you back. Rick, for those of you who don't know, first of all, was on our show around 1998. He was, at the time, the producer for John Records Landecker. After working for a number of years with Steve Dahl Garry Meier, he spent over 10 years with John Records Landecker producing his show on a regular basis and helped set up for me to have John on the show and have John do music on the show with his band at the time. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have you back, because I've had you back once more when your first book came out. This is the Radio Producer's Handbook, and Rick wrote a book about radio production, about being a producer in professional radio. And you wrote this book, and really it's still one of my favorite books, because for anybody who wants to get into radio, and most people start in behind the board, this tells them exactly what you had to do. You spent day and night, and you didn't have such internet availability like you do these days, but looking for news stories, comedy bits, little things to fit in between the music to keep the audience interested and keep the host of the show funny.
Right.
And you did a great job. And John today is still on the radio. He's still hysterical and fun to listen to. And part of that has to do with what you did for him at the time. And I know you're still really good friends with him.
Yes, I talk to him all the time. I always say that the difference between producing the Steve and Gary show and the John Landecker show was Steve and Gary were looking for bits that could kill 45 minutes of time. And John was looking for 45-second bits.
Right.
So it was a very different kind of radio.
Sure. And you are no longer doing radio production, though you were in it for so many years. What are you doing these days?
Well, I still write about radio. I have a media column for the Illinois Entertainer, a monthly column. But my main job is I'm a publisher. Eckhart's Press is the name of my company.
And some of these books we're going to look at came out from Eckhart's Press, right?
Yeah, a few of them did.
So we're going to do that. Your second book is a satire,
right? And
it was called Severance, and you sent this to me way back, and I read it, and it's been a while. Talks about some radio guys and trying to get some money and lose their job and get severance. Tell me about that book a little bit and how it came about.
Well, the premise is it's a Chicago radio disc jockey who is trying to get fired so he can collect his severance check because he doesn't like the way the corporate media has taken over. And so what he's trying to do is irritate his bosses into firing him so he can collect his paycheck. And the bosses won't fire him because they don't want to pay the severance, so they spend their time trying to make him quit by irritating him and being as nasty as possible. And that's the premise of this satire.
Fantastic. So I want to move on to your third book now. And this is your first real novel that wasn't a satire. I mean, this is a novelist story. Tell me about The Living Wills and Brendan Sullivan, who's also in radio and stuff, and how you guys came together and this book came about.
So Brendan called me, I think around 2009, and said he had this idea that he wanted to try. He wanted to see if we could use improv, because he was an improv artist. He worked at Illinois, or not, Improv Olympic for many years. And he thought we could improvise a storyline and then go back and write it in terms of I'd write a chapter, he'd write a chapter, and we wanted to see if we could mesh the story together. And we did. It was really a fascinating process, and this is the result of that. It took us about 2 years to do it.
That's fantastic. How did you get into writing? How do you go from being a radio producer and get into writing books?
Well, I've always considered myself a writer. Even when I was in radio, I was writing. I was writing, parody songs. I was writing bits. I was writing. I was coming up with concepts of material. That's what my job was with John. My job every day was to give him enough material that if he walked in with absolutely nothing, we could still do an entire show. So that was 4.5 hours of material I had to come up with every single day, and that
A lot of work.
that's a lot of work. But I got into the habit of doing it, and I still do it. I can't stop.
And you and he had a camaraderie on the air, off the air, and still do today, don't you?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
So tell me how you got into, and I know this is your publishing company too. Records truly is my middle name.
Yeah.
John Records Landecker. This is his book,
Yeah.
and you and he did it together. And tell me a little bit about what made John decide to write this book. How did you get involved in the writing and the publishing of the book? And where did you get all of the archives that are in here? There's so many pictures and archives throughout the whole book. Tell me how it all came about.
So it was my idea to write the book because I had worked with John for 10 years and I knew all of his stories, and his stories are unbelievable.
Great.
He has seen everything. I mean, there's a story in here from 1968. He was with Stevie Wonder the night Martin Luther King was assassinated. He was in a radio studio with them. It starts with stories like that. It's just one of the many stories that are in there throughout. He's met everybody. And so I said, you got to sit down and write these stories while you still remember them. And he did. I would drive out to his house. He lives in Michigan City, Indiana. I'd drive out to his house and I'd record him telling the stories, and then I'd come back home and I'd transcribe them, and I'd send him the what we had written, and we edited and polished it, and before we knew it, we had ourselves a book.
I know you know the answer to this, but John told it to me on the air when he was on my show before, how he got the name Records as a middle name. That's his real middle name.
Yeah.
And something to do with his grandparents. And so how did that all come about? Because I know everybody always wondered, why does he call himself John Records Landecker?
Well, that is actually on his birth certificate, John Records Landecker. The Records is his mother's maiden name. And when he was born, he was named John Records Landecker because his grandfather was a Records, and it was in honor of his grandfather.
In honor of his grandfather.
And it was like destiny.
It is destiny. It's destiny.
Although nobody knows what records are.
Right, that's true. What can you do, John? Compact disc.
Yeah, John
MP4,
iPod.
MP2.
Yeah, exactly.
This is your latest book, and,
Right.
and why I invited you here today, because when you sent me the book, my kids enjoyed it as much as I did. Father Knows Nothing. This is Rick Kaempfer's masterpiece about family life. And the stories in here, I presume most of them are really based on your family experiences and your children and your wife. And tell me, first of all, what made you decide to write a book about yourself and your life? Number two, what made you write it in the way that you wrote it? Because it's easy reading, it's esoterical. It has, even each chapter has a bunch of different stories in it, and sometimes they aren't connected to each other, and sometimes they are, but they're all life experiences. And my kids loved it because they reminded them of themselves and their own parents.
That's great.
Tell me what brought about the interest in writing about yourself and your family, and how did it come about?
Well, so I had a newspaper column called Father Knows Nothing that I started as a lark. I just started it as a blog. And I did it just because, as I mentioned to you, I was coming up with all this material. And one of the things that we did on Landecker's show was we talked about our families. We talked about our real life. That was part of the appeal of the show, three-dimensional characters on the radio. So I just kept doing it on a blog, and the Northwest Indiana Times contacted me and asked if I'd be willing to write it on a regular basis for them. They had a magazine they were starting, and so I did it for 8 years. Every week I had to write a column.
And you used your own life and your own family for the basis of your column.
Yeah, I like to say it's not a how-to book, it's a how-not-to book, because parenting to me is trial and error, and all the errors are right there in the book, because But anyway, so I started writing this column, and that's how I got started with it. And before I knew it, I had written 400 columns.
Wow. So before we went on the air, you told me that your kids love the book too, because I told you my kids love the book. Tell me what they thought about the memories of the experiences that you share about them in the book.
Well, there are a couple that they're slightly embarrassed about, but those are the tales from when they were really little, and everybody has stories like that. So, what they love is that their friends all bought the book, and their friends all read it. They all talk about it at school. It turned out to be a very popular thing for my youngest son in the junior high. They all have it. But all the stories in there are true stories. They all really happened. And what I discovered when I was writing this column was, if you have to write a humor column every week about yourself and your family, you're going to be looking for happiness and fun wherever you can find it, because that's what you have to provide for them. And if you spend your whole life doing that, before you know it, you've lived a pretty happy life. And so to me, this column was a gift, because it allowed me to look at what was going on with my family and appreciate it and look for those little moments. And writing them down, when I went to write the book, when I was going through the old columns, I didn't even remember some of these stories. And how many parents out there, you think you're never going to forget the stories, but you do. You forget the stories. And I was reading them, it was like reading about somebody else's children. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So let me go back. So I can tell you right now, like, you and I have both been married for about 23 years.
Right.
And we both have children around the same age. My wife doesn't want my life on TV.
Yeah.
She doesn't want my life on TV. She doesn't want my children on TV.
Yeah.
On occasion it happens and stuff like that, but she doesn't want that. There's a bit of privacy.
Sure.
Not to cross the line and stuff. What does your wife think about putting all these personal experiences and stories about family life, which affect her and your children, and all their friends know about them now? What did she think about this? Did she support you? Was she hesitant in wanting you to follow through with this? How's her support for that stuff?
It actually was never an issue, because when we started dating, I was Steve Garry's producer, and so she was thrust into the public light then already. And so she knew what she was getting into when she married me. And the kids, in the first introduction of that book, were literally born on the air, where I went into the delivery room with a handheld microphone and was interviewing her while she was giving birth. And then we played those back on the radio. And then I would call in from the delivery room right after they were born and went on the radio with John. And the transcripts of those calls are in the book. And that's why the kids are also not freaked out by it, because they literally have been going through this their entire lives. It's totally normal to them. It doesn't seem weird at all. They don't have any issues with it.
So my kids like to be behind the camera. They like to tape and be behind the camera, not necessarily be on the camera, although maybe if they had the opportunity and their mother would let them, they'd be on more. Although my oldest daughter did a YouTube TV show at one time when she was young, when she was junior high age.
Really? Okay.
When she was junior high age, also in middle school for a while. But that fizzled out because my wife didn't really like it. But,
Gotcha.
But she had the bug for a while there. Tell me what are your ambitions in the future? Do you want more books to come out? Do you want a bestseller? I mean, everybody wants a bestseller, but I mean, do you have ambition for another book? Do you want to do another novel? Do you have a whole bunch of things in life that you want to share with other people that you haven't written down yet since you're a writer? Or would you like to get back into radio again or TV?
Boy, that's a big question. I do have lots of other things that I want to write. Owning the publishing company is a very freeing thing, because I know that I'm not going to have to go out and pitch an agent and get a publisher lined up for the things that I want to write. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that it's a professional organization. I'm not going to just throw anything out. So right now I don't have a specific project that I'm working on, but I know that others will come up. One of the things I'm helping now is I'm helping other authors get published, and that's really rewarding. And they'll call me up and walk them through the process. We offer you know, a lot of people are self-publishing now. We offer people help with that, and some authors need help with certain things, some authors need help with other things, and we offer various different ways of doing that.
Very nice, very nice. Is there somebody always approaching you to say, hey, you did it with them, can you join me on this project? Do you have a lot of people coming to you,
quite a
asking you to
few,
be part
yes.
of their projects?
The problem is just the number of hours in the day. You know, I know that when I launch into a project, for instance, this one, you know, the Living Wills, that took 2 years to write. So it's a big commitment when you want to do a project. The John Landecker book took 2 years. You know, The Father Knows Nothing essentially took 8 years because that's how long I wrote
for
the
your
column. So I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So I'm helping them in certain ways, but I can't really jump in and do an entire project like that.
So the Living Wills, have you written a Living Will yourself?
I have.
You have?
A long time ago, but I don't remember what it says.
There you go.
Don't ask.
There you go. So we are here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. I am here with Rick Kaempfer, and we're going to talk to him again in a moment. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Maria?
Yeah?
Some things on TV scare Elmo.
If some things on TV make you or you feel sad or scared, tell a grown-up that's close to you.
Like you, Maria.
Yes, like me.
Hi guys, it's Pete McMurray and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Welcome back. We're here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. My guest is radio producer and author Rick Kaempfer. And Rick, it's so good to have you back on the show. I want to talk about your latest book and sometimes go back maybe to these other books. Father Knows Nothing. You know, the Radio Producer's Handbook, Severance, The Living Wills, Records Truly is my middle name. You've been involved in different types of books. This is a book about you and your family. Tell me some of your favorite stories out of this book.
Well, so I have 3 sons. And when you have...
Right, exactly. I'm tapping my foot. Yeah.
Do the thing in the front there. They fight a lot. Boys fight a lot.
People don't even know what we were just talking about.
Yeah, right, exactly. So when you live in a house with 3 boys that are literally fighting, you know, all day long, all they do is fight. One night we were out at a dinner, and I got to be too much for me. I couldn't take it anymore. They were fighting about something stupid, like, you know, somebody's fork was here or there, who knows what. I actually said this to them. I said, if you guys don't fight for the next week, I will give each of you $50 cash. And my wife looked at me like, you can't bribe them. But I thought, what the heck, I'm going to bribe them. And I saw the look in my son Sean's eyes. He's like, oh, we can make some money on this. So he started negotiating with me. What if we don't fight for a year? I said, if you don't fight for a year, I will give you $1,000 cash in single bills, and I will have it delivered by doves, one by one, into your hand so that you can take it home. And then he said, well, what if we don't fight for 2 years? I said, I will build you a golden calf, like in the movie The 10 Commandments, and I will drive that golden calf and both of you with me to Florida, to Disney World for a 2-week, all expenses paid vacation. 2 years, no fighting. So they were already spending the money on the way home. They were spending the money. The next morning, we had swimming lessons, and only one of them could find the goggles, so they had a fight over whose goggles were whose, and boom, they lost the money right there. Less than 24 hours.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Yeah. That's a great story. Have you ever, through this, been able to take stories from other people's lives and put it in the book? Or is everything straight from your home and your kids?
Everything is stories about my family, but I also go back and tell stories about my own childhood in the book. And that is the one person that did edit me, and that's my mother. My mother told me that she wanted no stories about her in the book. She's the one that really does not like when I talk about her. So I'm doing it now, Mom. Huh?
You're busted.
But yeah, there's lots of stories in there about that too.
What do you think was your most auspicious experience as a radio producer? You know, meeting someone, being involved in this or that situation on the air. It's obviously a great, attractive thing. Like you said, everybody wants to be on the air, and you got into radio production as a start. What was really the most exciting thing that happened along the way, or the most exciting musician or personality that you met along the way?
Well, I met a Beatle. I thought that was pretty cool. I met Ringo. And
Did you take pictures together?
I actually had him autograph my Ringo's Greatest Hits album, which I can confess now was actually the Loops version of that album, and I stole it.
Oh, well, it's all over.
Right. But I have that at home. I did not take a picture. You know, funny enough, throughout all those years, I met all these celebrities, probably hundreds of them. And, you know, basically anybody you can name came into one of those shows. But I never took pictures with any of them because I thought it was somehow like unprofessional or something. I don't know.
And you know what's funny? Just interesting. Things are different today because we have cell phones,
right,
and we have selfies and everything.
That's true.
I never ask anybody for a signature because I feel like it's crossing a line professionally to ask someone to sign something for me. But I will say, will you take a selfie with me or take a picture with me? Or can so-and-so take a picture of us together?
It was a different era, too.
Yeah, it was a different era, sure.
We didn't really have a camera lying around,
Right,
to be honest with you. You had to take a picture.
Sure.
But also Steve really frowned upon it. He didn't. He wanted us to be professionals. So that was kind of the way he brought me up in the business. So I never took any pictures.
So Ringo's one. Who's another one?
Oh, you name it. You know, Aerosmith. You're talking about rock and roll stars. Aerosmith, ZZ Top.
The whole band you saw. The whole band.
Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys.
Great. On tour this past week here in Chicago.
That's right.
And actually, and
almost died in the studio.
I saw him twice.
Almost died in the studio when we had him on.
Really?
He started choking on a cough drop or something. He started choking. And it's a famous tape. If you're a Steve Garry fan, there's a tape of it. I think it's like a minute long of just, it sounded like he was dying on the air. And you can hear how uncomfortable Steve and Gary were while it was going on. So that was a memorable one. And during that interview, he had that was during the era when he had a psychologist with him all the time. And the psychologist was like literally lying on the ground next to him. And for every question that was asked, he'd look down to see if it was okay, if he answered. It was really weird. That was really weird. So that was a memorable interview.
He's a really strange guy.
He is a strange guy.
But he's a genius.
But he's a genius.
But he's a genius. So you gotta.
I went up to shake his hand, and he was like, So that was odd, but I still am a huge fan of his music.
Yeah. Well, how can you not be? How can you not be? What do you listen to yourself? You know, for all the years you played the hits. You played the hits, you know, the oldies and the hits with John Records Landecker.
There were some oldies.
The talk shows before that, then the hits with John, and in between all your little bits that you put together for him. What music do you listen to?
Well, there are some oldies, I'll be honest with you, that still I can't handle, even after, you know, being out of it for 10 years. They're Do-Wah-Diddy, Man for Man. That makes me break into cold sweat. I mean, if you think about it, we played the same 200 some oldies every day for 10 years. So there's some that I just can't take anymore. But I still know, this is one of these trivia things that irritates my kids, but I still know the length of every song. I know how long the record intro is, you know, before the bridge, before they start singing. I can tell you what year these songs came out. And I always say these things as we're listening to the radio. But now in the cell phone era, that's no longer that exciting because they can just look it up.
Just look it up.
So there's a lot of worthless information that I cannot get rid of.
Wow. But that's kind
of
like
a savant.
Kind of an amazing thing.
Yeah.
What do you think? Let me go back. We talked about this at length when the Radio Producer's Handbook came out. One of my favorite books because it really is a hands-on get into radio book. And I started out doing radio in high school. I was a DJ in college, and here I am on TV. What do you think if someone's interested in getting into radio today? What do you think their first step is? Is it going to a school like Columbia and taking radio and TV classes, production classes, and things like that? Is it going into small markets, as you mentioned earlier, going into small markets and applying for jobs? Is it looking for an internship and then moving up? Tell me, what is the first step for people who want to go into radio, since you're the guru and you know better than anyone else?
Oh, thank you. Well, first, this book is in, at one point it was in 65 universities being used as to teach how to do radio shows. But there is no longer such a thing as small market radio. So there used to be a day when you could go work in Provo, Utah or something and work your way up. Well, there's no such thing as that anymore. Now everything is syndicated, and all of these big stations send their programming to the little stations, so you can't start that way. So now what you have to do is get in through an internship or something like that would be my recommendation.
Very good.
You can stay in your hometown that way.
Yeah. Do you think getting into it in high school and college radio stations, that those are good stepping stones for getting?
They
an
are,
internship?
because what they do is they give you experience. You know, I went to the University of Illinois, and we had a radio station there called WPGU, and I was on that station every day, and that's how I learned how to do a radio show. And so I was experienced. When I came up to Chicago to work for Steve and Gary, I had already done a show for 3 years, so at least I knew something about the industry.
Very cool, very cool. Well, our time is running down. Give me one more quick story, because I love this book so much. Father Knows Nothing by Rick Kaempfer, his latest book. Give me a quick story.
All right, I'll tell you a story from my own childhood that is in this. This is a true story. My father was from Germany. Both my parents were German immigrants. And he loved the story of Hansel and Gretel. He would tell us this story every night. Now, if you think about what that story is about, it is kind of a sick story. These parents leave their children in the woods to die because they can't feed them. That's what the story is about. And the children have to figure out a way to get back home. So this was the story that he used to terrify us with. And one night, my sister and I were in an argument, and my dad said, "You know what? I got to take you out to the woods. Go pack your stuff. We're going out in the car. Here's a piece of rye bread for each of you. On the way there, start dropping little crumbs, and then maybe you can find your way home." And we got into the car, and we looked at my dad like, "Dad, you're not really going to do this." "Oh, yes, I am." And he started driving, and my sister started throwing the rye bread out the window while I was pleading with him not to do this. He pulled into a convenience store, went in, bought a pack of smokes, drove us back home. So he didn't really leave us in the woods, but boy, I tell you, that was a terrifying moment for 4-year-old Ricky Kaempfer in Chicago.
Wow. Great story. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show, and I can't thank you all enough for being with us. Remember, if you want to check out our website, it's www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see Rick Kaempfer on my show in the past, and John Records Landecker. If you
Looking younger.
A little bit. If you want to email us, the email address is info@tvrabbi.com. And if you want more information about the Radio Producer's Handbook, Severance, The Living Wills, Records Truly Is My Middle Name, or Father Knows Nothing, then I will be sure to forward your email on to Rick, and I know he'll get back to you and give you more information about those. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Rick Kaempfer, radio guru, friend, and a great author. And thank you all for being with us, and hope to see you all next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
Doug on your TV show, where he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need, you're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.